A Roman emperor kneeling in the dirt, not dead, not fleeing, kneeling, captured alive on the battlefield, staring up at a man who had just done something no enemy of Rome had ever managed to pull off. And the guy standing over him? He didn't just accept the surrender and move on. He had the whole scene carved into a mountain, a permanent giant stone message to every civilization on Earth. Rome lost to us. That man was Shapur I, King of Kings of the Sassanian Empire, an empire so powerful, so sophisticated, so genuinely extraordinary that it held Rome at a standstill for 4 centuries straight. You've never heard of them, and that's the most insane part of this whole story.
Okay, so 224 AD, the Persian world is being run by the Parthians. They've been in charge for about 400 years, which sounds impressive until you understand what the Parthian Empire actually looked like by this point. A loose, fractured mess of semi-independent lords who'd basically stopped listening to the king in the center. It was the kind of empire that had the name of a superpower, but was quietly rotting from the inside. Enter Ardashir I, a regional governor, a priest king's descendant from the province of Fars, the ancient heartland of Persian civilization. He watched the Parthian Empire crumbling and made a decision that would reshape the next 4 centuries of human history. He revolted. Between 220 and 224 AD, Ardashir fought his way through the Parthian military until the final, decisive showdown at the Battle of Hormozgan. The Parthian king, Artabanus IV, died on that battlefield. And just like that, 400 years of Parthian rule finished. But here's what makes Ardashir genuinely brilliant. And I mean actually brilliant, not just he won some battles brilliant. He didn't just conquer, he reframed history. He deliberately, consciously linked his new dynasty to the ancient Achaemenid Persians, Cyrus the Great, Darius, Xerxes, the legends. He was essentially saying to every Persian alive, we're not a new empire, we're the resurrection of the greatest empire that ever existed. We're the rightful heirs to history itself. That's not just propaganda, that's psychological genius. And it worked. It unified a fractured region under a shared identity almost overnight. Within years, he'd overhauled the tax system, elevated Zoroastrianism as the state religion, built a centralized bureaucracy, and started construction on a capital that would eventually become one of the largest cities on Earth. This wasn't a warlord grabbing land. This was a man building a civilization with intention. His son, Shapur I, inherited all of it and then decided to do something truly unforgettable with it.
Let's talk about Rome for a second, because to understand how extraordinary the Sassanians were, you need to understand what Rome was at this point. The Roman Empire at its peak controlled roughly 5 million square kilometers. It had the most professional military on Earth. Its infrastructure, roads, aqueducts, legal systems, was the envy of the ancient world. Entire civilizations crumbled when Rome showed up. The Gauls, the Carthaginians, the Egyptians, one by one, absorbed or destroyed. And then Rome hit Persia, and for 400 years, nothing. Stalemate, near equals, 2 superpowers staring each other down across the Euphrates River like 2 heavyweights who both know the other one can actually take a punch. The Sassanian Empire, at its height, stretched from modern-day Iraq in the west to Pakistan in the east, from the Caucasus Mountains in the north down toward the Arabian Peninsula. We're talking somewhere between 20 and 35 million people. Historians debate the exact figures, across a territory that covered some of the most strategically important land on Earth. Their capital, Ctesiphon, near modern-day Baghdad, may have been the largest city in the world at certain points in the 5th and 6th centuries. Their throne hall, the Takh Kasra, had a freestanding arch over 35 meters high built without a keystone. It's been standing for 1,700 years. Part of it still stands right now, outside Baghdad. But forget the architecture for a second. I need to tell you about 260 AD. Shapur I had already beaten Rome twice in major engagements, and I want you to really feel what that means, because Rome did not lose battles. That was kind of their whole thing. And here's this Persian king handing them 2 massive defeats like it's nothing. Rome, understandably, is furious. So Emperor Valerian, a sitting Roman emperor, the most powerful man in the Western world, personally leads a massive army east to settle this. And Shapur captured him, alive, on the battlefield. The exact details of how it happened are slightly debated by historians. Some sources say it was a pitched battle near Edessa, others suggest there was a negotiation trap involved, but the outcome, not debated at all. Valerian spent the rest of his life as a Persian prisoner. He never went home. He died in captivity. And Shapur, oh Shapur, he didn't let anyone forget it. At Nakhche-Rostam, carved into the same cliffs where ancient Achaemenid kings had placed their tombs, he commissioned a massive rock relief. It's still there, you can go see it. It shows Shapur on horseback, Valerian kneeling before him, grabbing his wrist in submission. Another Roman figure, possibly Emperor Philip, who had previously paid the Sassanians a humiliating ransom, prostrated on the ground below. He put a permanent monument to Rome's worst day on the side of a mountain. And the thing is, the Sassanians weren't just warriors. Their court at Ctesiphon was legendary for its wealth and culture. Artisans produced silk and silver metalwork traded as far as China and Viking Age Scandinavia, and you can find Sassanian silver dishes in museums from London to St. Petersburg today. They translated Greek philosophical texts. They developed early versions of chess. The game almost certainly evolved from Sassanian Persia before spreading west. Christian, Jewish, and Zoroastrian communities lived within their borders. Doctors, philosophers, astronomers, all working, all welcomed. This was not a gap-year empire. This was the real thing, a civilization firing on every cylinder, which makes what comes next almost impossible to process.
The year is 628 AD. The Sassanian Empire has existed for over 400 years, and by almost any measure, they're winning. Emperor Khosrow II had spent the previous decades on the most aggressive expansion the empire had seen in generations. His armies had swept through Byzantine Syria, they'd taken Palestine, and Jerusalem, which was devastating symbolically for the entire Christian world. They'd conquered Egypt. They reportedly seized a relic of the True Cross, the single most sacred object in Christendom. For a hot second, it looked like Persia was about to swallow the last remnant of Rome. And then Heraclius, the Byzantine emperor, did something extraordinary. He launched a deep counterattack, slicing into the heart of Sassanian territory between 622 and 628 in a campaign that military historians still study. He pushed so far east, he reached regions no Byzantine force had touched in generations. The Sassanian military, overextended and exhausted from decades of total war, couldn't hold. In 628, Khosrow II was overthrown by his own son and then executed. What followed was a political collapse so fast, it's almost hard to believe. 10 emperors in 4 years, court factions murdering each other, a military that no longer knew who to take orders from. The administrative systems that had run the empire smoothly for centuries started seizing up like an engine with no oil. Then came famine from years of war disruption, then possibly plague. Sources mention epidemic disease sweeping through the region, though historians debate the scale. The empire that had humiliated Rome was now too busy tearing itself apart to notice the new threat assembling on its southern border. The Arab-Muslim armies that emerged from the Arabian Peninsula in the 630s hit Persia at its absolute weakest moment. At the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636 AD, the Sassanian military, what was left of it, was broken. Ctesiphon fell. The treasuries, the palace, the throne room where kings of kings had received the world's ambassadors for 4 centuries, gone. The last emperor, Yazdegerd III, ran and kept running, east, always east, trying to raise support, trying to rally what remained, province by province peeling away. He ran for almost 2 decades, and in 651 AD, hiding in a grain mill near the city of Merv in Central Asia, alone, practically anonymous, a long way from Ctesiphon's golden throne, he was murdered by a miller, the last king of kings, the heir to Cyrus, to Darius, to Shapur, to the man who carved Rome's humiliation into a mountain, killed in a grain mill by a common laborer. I've read a lot of history. That ending still hits differently every single time.
So why did we forget them? Partly because the Islamic caliphates that followed wrote the history, and partly because Sassanian Persia doesn't fit the Western story we usually tell, the one where it's all Rome and Greece and then the Middle Ages. Persia sits awkwardly in the middle of that story and gets skipped over. But here's the thing, the Sassanians didn't vanish. They dissolved into everything that came after. Persian language survived and flourished. Sassanian art, courtly culture, administrative systems, and architecture were absorbed directly into early Islamic civilization and shaped it profoundly. The Tak Kasra Arch still stands outside Baghdad. The rock carvings at Naqsh-e-Rostam are still there, a 17th-century-old monument to the day Persia made Rome kneel, still readable, still waiting for more people to come and see it. They didn't disappear. They became the bones of the world that replaced them. Makes you wonder what else got buried in the footnotes, doesn't it? If there's a forgotten empire you want me to hunt down next, throw it in the comments. I genuinely read every single one. And next time, we're going somewhere that's going to seriously surprise you. This was the Sassanian Empire, the civilization that matched Rome, humiliated Rome, outlasted Rome, and somehow got left out of every history class you ever took. Not anymore.